going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Happy Friday. It's early enough that it's not too hot in Tallahassee, but it's going to be a scorcher today, which means I'm out on two wheels making some new videos for you all. And I'm really excited about today's video and next week's video because it's today is part one of a two-part video that I've put together, and we're talking about Harley Davidson's brand, their identity, and their marketing strategies. Now, before I even jump in, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. Really does a lot to help me out. It doesn't take much from y'all, and I really appreciate it. Let's get going on this. So I am dead convinced that there are two Harley Davidson Motor Companies. And before I go any further, I just want to preface everything in the video with, none of this is a criticism necessarily of what the motor company is choosing to do when it comes to their branding and marketing. All this is really just an analysis and some highlighting of some broader questions. Because I've been noticing some trends when it comes to I guess you could say some differences between how Harley is marketing itself and how it is choosing to portray its identity, and then how riders and current customers would describe the brand of the motor company. So let's talk about the first one. The first Harley Davidson Motor Company is the one that is actually based out of Milwaukee. If you go ahead and take a look at their social media, their Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever they're putting up a lot of their advertising, you're going to notice that, especially recently, they've got some really good-looking, clean-cut, action-oriented motorcycling branding and advertising, and I actually really, really like it. It's really well done. The action shots in their videos to advertise their bikes look really, really good. They've put a lot of time and a lot of energy into focusing on different kinds of riders with different kinds of backgrounds and different kind of backstories. You know, I think they've really committed to showing that Harleys can be anybody's bike and that motorcycling can be for anybody, which is really the message that I think most people need to hear, because I think a lot of people have a lot of stereotypes, you know, culturally that have been ingrained into their psyche when it comes to Harley Davidsons and riding motorcycles in general. So I actually really, really like what the motor company has been doing for their branding and their marketing lately. So there's that. I think the second Harley Davidson Motor Company that exists is the one that current Harley riders and customers would describe and identify. So that's what I did. I wanted to know how people who are already riding and who have been riding would describe the brand of Harley Davidson. So what I did is I went onto all my social media, my Facebook, my Instagram. I went into all my special groups that have to do with riding or Harley ownership, what have you, and I just asked, hey, how would you describe Harley Davidson's brand and their marketing identity? How would you describe the Harley Davidson experience and, you know, their brand? So I got a lot of really, really good feedback. So I sat down, I went through over 100 responses, and I just wrote out the different sort of kind of common responses. And then I started to tally what keywords and what concepts were most often mentioned when people were asked to describe the Harley Davidson brand. And here's what I found. There were two main answers that people gave when they were discussing Harley Davidson's brand and identity, and here they are. Number one, the first keyword is American made. American, Americana, American icon. That's really how current riders would describe Harley Davidson's brand and describe sort of Harley Davidson's whole essence. For the most part is American, American made. That's what people love about it. The second most common thing, and it wasn't far behind the first, was community and family. So many people talked about the people that they've met, the friends that they've made, and even how they got into motorcycling because a parent or a grandparent or another family member who had been riding, you know, sort of coached them and mentored them about motorcycles and helped them get started in riding themselves. So those are the two big things that people mention when they're asked to describe Harley Davidson's brand. Now, if we look at the branding of Harley Davidson and we start to look at specifically the sort of core qualities and characteristics that Harley is basing its current branding and marketing on, you don't get a big feel of Americana, American icon, or family and community. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to see either of those qualities at all in the branding, because you will. I have, as I look through their branding and marketing, I saw a lot that had to do with Harley's story, Harley's legacy, Harley's history, racing, building bikes, their origin story, that sort of thing. So in a sense, that does sort of tie in with the American history, American legacy, but not so much in a really explicit way, more in a, correlating Harley's history as being American history, which it is, but they aren't throwing up American flags and everything. And when we talk about community, not a lot of their marketing really talks about the community too much. There are some cool videos and cool photos of, maybe black and white images that were captured of a dad with their young kid on their knee as they were sitting on their Harley or something like that. But again, not a lot of their marketing and advertising really talks about and tries to sell the idea of the community that's associated with riding, and how, the Harley experience really can be a family experience, and for a lot of riders, it is. So I guess my question is, why? And that's not really a question that I can answer because I don't work for Harley, I don't have a desk in their marketing department, and that's really only something that someone from there could give us a good answer to. But I can sort of speculate, and I'll just say, I guess, Harley is advertising in a way that they think is going to connect with younger people today. So their advertising and marketing is mimicking the advertising and marketing that they believe sort of really hits home with people maybe between 25 and 40, the millennials, the demographic that I'm a part of. And so I guess my big question is, why isn't it working? And again, that's not a critical question. It makes sense. You want more young people to get involved in riding, you're going to use advertising that you believe is going to connect with those people that you want to connect your products with. But the numbers are pretty clear. It's not really working. So what do? Well, historically, if we look back to the 1980s, that's when Harley Davidson sales really were at their peak, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I guess I would ask, what was their advertising like back in the 80s, and what can the success of that advertising in that time period teach us about what Harley Davidson could be focusing on now? Now, I'm not suggesting that Harley Davidson needs to re-adopt the advertising campaigns and the advertising exactly as they used it in the 1980s. I obviously pretty aware that that probably wouldn't connect with people today, 40 years later. But what we could do is look at what kind of qualities were advertised in Harley Davidson advertising 40 years ago, and figure out why that kind of advertising and why those certain qualities connected with people who would become customers later. I didn't actually do any research into the advertising that was around when Harley was at its peak, but I'm sure I'd find a lot of advertising that focused on being all American and American made, and a focus on the idea of community, the idea of a group, the idea of family. So I guess the even bigger question is, could we use that today? Would that connect today? Would that be worthwhile to make a part of the advertising and marketing qualities today? I think it would. I got a lot of responses, as I mentioned before. Some of them were from people that had been riding for decades, and some responses were from people who had been riding for a few years. People under 30, people under 40. And they all mentioned a lot of the same things. They like that it's an American-made product built by people right here in the USA. And a lot of them had stories about how they were introduced to riding by their dad, by a grandparent, by another family member. Family and community. So a lot of the responses I got, even from younger riders, tied into those two larger themes of how people would sort of identify Harley's branding and marketing. So here we are, we have this divide between how people would describe Harley Davidson themselves and how Harley Davidson is identifying themselves through their own branding. So I still don't really have a clear picture of what the Harley Davidson brand is. So let's talk about next week's video. I figured the best way to actually get a really clear picture of what Harley Davidson's brand and identity are would be to talk to someone who is immersed in the Harley Davidson lifestyle every single day. Next week, I'm sitting down with Kevin Lytle. He's the brand new owner of Tallahassee Harley Davidson. He and his team just took over a few weeks ago, and the vibe at the shop is already greatly improved over the previous ownership. I sat down and talked to Kevin and tried to figure out, what is Harley's brand? What's their identity? Where's the motor company at? And even more largely, where's motorcycling at? And what can we do to really get more people at a younger age in the saddle and show them why motorcycling should be a part of their life? Kevin had a lot of really great answers and a lot of really cool insights. So make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss an interview with Kevin Lytle. Alright y'all, thanks for checking out the channel again. I'm the Two Wheel Teacher. Don't miss part 2 next week. I'll see you all on the road.